Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 683. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, Ben Wozniki and I talk about the book and ideas inside the covers of Team Topologies. Ben provides a great deal of advice on creating teams that are fit for purpose. Ben and I have worked together, hosted a video podcast together, and more. It is a great conversation. Ben is an organizational health coach, helping you deliver sooner with higher confidence and more consistency. He has 10 years of experience with all facets of technical and business agility and organizational transformation. He collaborates with, trains, mentors, and coaches at all levels to smooth the transition to lean and agile ways of delivering value. He aligns transformation efforts to organizational objectives so everyone is on the same page. Are you ready to wrestle with Team Topologies? It's time for the conversation.
Ben Wozniki, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Howdy, Tom. Thanks for having me.
You know, Ben, so all cards on the table. Ben, you and I have worked together. Ben, you and I have drank scotch together. Ben, you and I have eaten food together. We recorded a video podcast together. So we've done a few things. So this is almost old homework week. Let's talk about team topologies and why those are important. So you have done a lot of work in this category. Start with the whole idea. What is the idea of team topologies?
So Team Topologies is basically a set of patterns that the authors identified as they went out and they looked at how do organizations form teams and what patterns work for them when they form those teams. So I would say it's a set of patterns that you can use to help design your organization so that you can have reasonable confidence.
So they've gone out and done all this studying, but let's look at teams that we know. Did somebody look up and study how to build a team, or do most teams just sort of happen by, just sort of osmosis?
Yeah, I think in my experience at least, most teams happen based on the constraints that you're in the middle of, right? You've got some business need, and then you have some level of staffing. You have staff members who do things, and you're like, okay, I've got all this stuff I'm trying to accomplish. Here's what I have on hand. And frequently you mash those together and you come out with something. Sometimes there's a larger organizational change that's happening, or even incremental organizational change where your funding levels might be shifting. So maybe you have, here's the existing staff, here's all the seats that we have aligned, and we might be adding in some seats. It tends to be kind of half intentional and half, kind of going to war with the army that you have.
If there are patterns for different kinds of teams, I guess I'm stuck. So yeah. I'm stuck on the whole idea of patterns for teams. So can you give me an example of a pattern for a team?
Yeah. So I think for me, probably the most common one that I usually think of is in terms of just a typical agile team. And with that team, usually they're responsible for some application or set of technology that delivers some value to some user group. And usually, not always for sure, this is especially on like the smaller scale, I think we could call that area of value a stream, like a value stream. So one of the patterns that is articulated within Team Topologies is the stream aligned team, which is to say your team, their span of responsibility is specifically just for that value stream, and that's it. So that's one example of a pattern for a team.
So a common team type that I see a lot these days is a team that is responsible for, I don't know, responding to any problem ticket for, let's say, Microsoft 360.
Sure.
Is that a stream, or is that some other pattern of teams?
Gotcha. Well, so in that model, I think you're referring more to like a IT support team.
Yeah.
They don't actually own Office 365. They are responsible for supporting the users within an organization that consume Office 365. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's a good tie down of that example.
Yeah. So I might put that more into an enabling team if we're using the patterns that are articulated in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So an enabling team, what they're responsible for is ensuring that other parts of the organization are able to focus on another domain, and then that enabling team makes sure that that domain team or that stream aligned team is able to just focus on what's in front of them, and that enabling team provides support for other ancillary tools that enable the stream aligned team to get their job done. So I think like Office is a good example of that. Your network support guys is another example of that. Even facilities in an organization, I think, would be an example of that.
So an organization might have a whole bunch of different kinds or different patterns of teams. Are the structures of those teams different, or is it just the kind of work and how work comes to them different?
So in terms of the structure, I guess, what do you mean by structure in this? Like how many members are in there? How the different types of roles that the team has? Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Yeah. But I mean, let's just pick on a Scrum team. And that's, a pretty standard pattern that we see all the time, right? The team is a bunch of people that do stuff. You might have a Scrum Master who's the voice of the process, and a product owner who's the voice of the product. And perhaps a team lead outside or a manager outside that's going around and causing trouble. I'm kidding about the trouble part. But so that's a pretty common structure, and I could see that being applied to a stream.
Yeah. So this particular content doesn't really go into that structure per se, I don't think. However, what they do start to get into is, are those individuals dedicated to their particular team, or are they split up? So there's this concept of team first software boundaries or system boundaries or team boundaries, which really tries to take into account the fact that as human beings, we've got capacities for things. And if we're taking on a lot of different types of work and types of responsibilities, it's going to be it's going to take more effort from us to do each of the tasks that we're responsible for. This kind of gets into task switching overhead for individuals, right? If I have to deal with 3 different domains and I'm constantly hopping between those, it's going to reduce the overall amount of work that I can actually deliver, because I've got to take a big slice off the top for cognitive overhead. So one of the first principles they have is that individuals should be dedicated to their team such that they're able to maximize that individual's capacity and how much work they can actually deliver.
These are pretty basic. I don't mean them to be basic like that, but
fundamental.
Yeah, I think we all would recognize that. But let's face it, how many teams do you know that where everyone is actually dedicated to the team, especially if you have somebody who has some degree of specialty?
Right. Yeah. So it's rampant, perhaps. It's rare that folks are consistently dedicated all the time. Thinking about some of the work that I'm involved with right now, and data is a separate team than the rest of the development organization. And so they really provide a service. They've got the different databases, and they've got data mapping, and they've got data migration. We're doing a migration project. And so they provide that service to the rest of the organization. And we defined one individual who acts as the lead. And then they kind of funnel work to different participants so that they service the whole organization rather than just a single team. And that, I think, is a pretty common pattern I've seen elsewhere as well.
Right. No, I do too. So you have a stream team, or stream team working with a value stream or product stream, and support or enabling teams that support them. Is that an effective approach?
Yeah, I think it's effective. I think the question is, just from a practical day-to-day operating, can the group of individuals provide the value or the capabilities, the functions that are necessary for the organization to be able to deliver whatever it is that lets them keep the doors open, right? So in the scenario we're working with, it works okay. I don't know that there's a better approach. I guess one of the things that you're dealing with is the lumpiness in demand, right? So I've got 4 other teams. They're not going to need data services all at the same time. Some will need it more now, some will need more later, and you'll run into different gaps at different times and need to cover those gaps so that we can keep delivering the software. So for me, it's more like, are we setting up people for success so that they can deliver what they need to deliver? I don't really have here's what's the perfect team structure. I think for me, it's more of here's the challenges I see in the environment. Here's how we're funding the staff for those challenges. And then who do I have available that can fit into those? Am I enabling them to be able to focus on a narrow range of responsibilities as much as possible so that they can really be successful with that range of responsibilities? And am I able to shield them and protect them from noise that's going to take away from their capacity because they have to process that noise, so that they can really focus on the main task at hand.
So as a leader, Ben, how do you do that?
How have I personally done it?
Yes. How would you do it? Yes.
Yeah. So when I try, like, I'm a very visual learner. So for me, listening to people talk doesn't really click things in my head. But drawing things out and getting a big visual of here's what the implications are of the constraints that I've been given, like that makes a big difference for me. So right now we're in a remote only space for all practical purposes. And I'll use typically Miro or Mural, one of those tools. And I'll basically draw out what the organization looks like right now. So that would look like an org chart. And then I will create, either Post-it notes or other little diagrams on my virtual whiteboard for all of the slots that I have available. So that generally boils down to funding, right? And that gives me X FTEs at different skill levels. And then, so I'll have that as kind of a, here's, I don't know, the capacity that I have to fill of the organization. And then I'll have another set of Post-its that are all of the individuals that I have right now, as well as any new headcounts that I haven't hired yet. And I'll put all those up on the board. And then I will take all of the headcounts that I know I have available to me, and I will look at the backlog of all of the work that I know is coming. And based on the work that I know is coming, I will align headcounts to that work. All right. Now, and those headcounts are going to be clustered into teams. So now we're at kind of like a very rough grained, how much am I basically spending on each team? And what is the job that team needs to accomplish? Once I have, here's how much money or headcount I have available, then I can start, and the work, I can start splitting that up into like rough skill sets or rough roles for each team that I think would enable me to deliver that functionality. So I kind of have, I don't want to use the term walking skeleton, but I have a straw man of sorts that has a bunch of slots for all the people that are going to be on that team. Now, there's kind of two approaches from here that we can take, or at least that I've taken and had some success with. One is a leadership focused approach where leadership is saying, here's who I want on each of those teams. Another approach is more of a vote with your feet kind of scenario where I want input from the contributors in terms of where do they want to work? Who do they want to work with? What do they want to work on? And back when we used to meet face-to-face all the time, we would just do that in a big room, and people would walk around, and there would be some negotiation, because inevitably there would be some folks who, some teams that have too many members, or some teams that don't have enough members, or they don't have the right mix. And so we might need to negotiate a little bit with the participants so that we have a useful mix in each of the teams. So either top-down, management-led, or vote with your feet kind of approach. What I've also seen more in the vote with your feet approach is where teams are identified by leadership and the slots, and here's how many members we need for each team. And then they will survey the individual contributors with what are your forced ranked top 3 teams that you want to work on. So the teams are defined, the work that each team is going to work on is defined. And by team being defined, I really meant there the head count and the roles for the teams defined. And then the individuals can reply to that survey and say, okay, I want to be on X team for X product first, and then, Y team for another piece of it, and Z team for another piece of it. And then in that model, it's kind of up to leadership to look at those and try to just make a best effort slotting of people to try to get them aligned with the people and the work that they're interested in.
Do you think those latter 2 options, and I think actually you and I have been together and working together when we've done at least the big room one, do you think those options end up with teams that lack intellectual diversity? I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah,
I'm looking back at some of the ones that we've participated in, both from a support kind of team and a stream kind of team. And I don't know if I know what the answer is.
Right. I would imagine it could be a risk. Like, this is kind of the risk is that you end up with a bunch of little echo chambers where you don't really have diversity of culture or thought, such that the team isn't as robust and as adaptable as it could be. Am I thinking about the same kind of?
We're both thinking the same thing. I mean, they might have great cohesion because they're all the same. They're all from one little town in Ohio versus we're not including anybody from Tennessee.
Right. Or the more obvious technology obviously hasn't been all that great on inclusion. So it's a risk. I'd have to think about that one more and kind of go through teams I've seen stood up. I would put that maybe as something for leadership to look out for when they're identifying the teams.
Yeah, there's got to be some guardrails.
Right. You can go Wild West, and you can have it just whatever people want to work with each other. And there are organizations, I think, that have done that. But in general, I think you're going to have, I've certainly had a hard time pitching a totally laissez-faire approach to team forming. Usually I'm pretty happy if they give any voice to the individual contributors.
Yeah, I think that's the opposite end of that spectrum, and that probably is knowing the power of getting people involved in forming teams and actually having seen that work. I think we both would recognize that doing nothing is probably just as bad, or taking nothing in is just as bad as absolute laissez-faire without any guardrail.
Right. Yeah, this is, one of the concepts that has been coming up a lot for me lately has been that of energy balance, right? Which is to say, when I'm engaging with anyone, when I have any kind of interactions, I shouldn't walk away from that feeling exploited or the other person shouldn't feel exploited. There should be a sense that we've both given and taken in appropriate amounts such that we're still equals. And I think when we think about like leadership and management responsibilities, management's the one getting paid to make the decisions ostensibly. Part of their responsibility is the due diligence around whatever topic they're making decisions. And I would think that if I'm responsible for forming a team, I need to have my head in that game, and I need to understand what problem we're solving, have a sense of what's necessary to solve that problem, and to some degree, basically be performing organizational architecture so that the people who are responsible for doing the work are set up for success, and they have what they need within their team structure, and they have what they need from any other parts of the organization or any of the tools or systems that they're dependent on so that they can be successful. If I'm not doing that, I don't think I'm really doing my job as a manager.
And books like Team Topology, do they give organizations, leaders, tools to get their head in that game and participate?
Yeah, I think especially if you haven't formed an organization or teams or a program, it can be kind of a daunting task. For me, one of the things that I find myself saying as I work with different folks is, all right, take that and put that in a box, which is to say, got a little concept. It's a useful concept. It's kind of small, though, and that's not my primary concern. So let's put that in a box, set that off to the side. Here's another one. It's related. Put that into a box, too. I'm not super worried about it. Here's another one. This one is big and meaty. So there's a box around that. And I want to have tools that enable me to put things into appropriate boxes so that I can know when I can kind of put it off to the side and have confidence that it's in a safe place. So what do I mean by that? In terms, like, I'm sure everyone has heard by now, like, no model is perfect, but some are useful, right? And so a tool like this, where it identifies some really common patterns to creating teams and what teams are responsible for and how to think about team membership, help leadership take the problems that they're facing, put them into a bunch of little boxes so that they can wrap their head around the whole big thing. And I think just like individual contributors, we need to set them up for success by providing appropriate constraints and clear goals and appropriate autonomy. Leadership needs similar things so that they can wrap their head around the problems that they're trying to solve and put those into boxes and be able to deliver those with a bow on it so that they can be successful in their organization as well.
Put it under a tree. Ben, if people wanted to continue the conversation, wanted to discuss this with you, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. Probably the best way is to reach out to me via my email. That is b@benwoz, benwoz.com.
And we'll have that in the contact notes. Would it be okay also to reach out on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is handy. Yep, LinkedIn's great.
All right. Ben, this has been absolutely fantastic. Is there anything you'd like to promote? You've given us a lot to think about today, so the platform is yours if you'd like.
Yeah, so in terms of things I'd like to promote, Tom and I have been working out of the greater Cleveland area for a while now. I've been fortunate enough to have worked with some good folks in the region. I've been fortunate enough to be able to have coach roles in the region without having to travel. That's been awesome. I think for me, it's connecting with folks who are also in this same space where we are looking for better ways to create not just software, but organizations. And in particular, to be able to do that in the city that we live in. So I'm interested in meeting more folks who are in that space and who want to do great things.
Wicked fine. So let us see if we can arrange that in the Northeast Ohio area. Ben, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your ideas. You always fill up pages of notes when we talk, and I look forward to doing this again.
Remember, we've just completed our reread of Project to Product last week, and next week we'll begin our reread of Agile Conversations. Transform your conversations, transform your culture. Next week on the Software Process and Measurement Cast, we will begin 2022 with a reflection on the economic rationale for breaking work down into smaller pieces. We'll also have a visit from Tony Timbol and the To Tell a Story column. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?